Okay, so in this video I'm going to talk about arrays and array formulas. So if you're not familiar with arrays, this will be probably a pretty good introduction. So first of all, what is an array? Usually it's a little easier to explain arrays when you're in Excel versus Google Sheets, but that should not be a problem. So first of all, I'm going to start with an equal sign and I'm going to place an array here. So the way I can say that what I'm doing is an array is I can use this curly brackets. So what I have in between this curly brackets is my array. An array is basically a set of values that could be rows and combined with columns. So what does that mean? So let's say I do 1, 2, 3. So when you're doing commas, that's basically your separation of columns. So right now, this is an array with 3 values, 1, 2 and 3. And these are 3 different rows. So if I simply just hit enter here, you'll see that basically that entire array from this formula is being placed in 3 different columns here. So again, this is our separation of columns. So I hope I didn't say rows at some point, but if I did, just make sure it's a row. Everyone understand that a comma is a column. So now we have 3 columns. Now what if I wanted to move to a different row in this array? So to do that, you do a semicolon. And semicolon indicates now we're moving to the next row. So now let's say I'm going to do 4, 5, 6. So basically this will be our first row with 3 columns. And this will be our second row with 3 columns again. So if I enter, you're going to see we have those values. And obviously if I want another row, I just do another semicolon and basically just place your values. Oh, let's do comma. And there we are. So we have our set of values basically just placed on a screen. That should give you a little understanding about how arrays are structured. So we can comma for columns and semicolon to basically indicate another row. Okay. So now that we know that, let's try to do some calculations and some results in arrays. So you can do some pretty interesting things with arrays. So one thing we can do is, for example, build a new range and reposition columns. So what do I mean by that? I can start an equal sign. I can do my curly bracket. What I can do, I can highlight all of these values as my coast, as my first column, as I said. And remember how we separate columns is by using a comma, right? So the next column is going to be these values over here. So if I do my curly brackets to close this, I'm going to hit enter. Now you're going to see that what I get is basically the same 2 columns only in the opposite order. Now basically this is my first column and this is the second column. And obviously didn't have to be columns that are next to one another, and you can just continue. I can do another comma and decide, okay, so then I'm going to do this. Right? And now we should see those 3 columns, repositions and rearrange. And now this is the way we actually see those results. Hopefully that makes sense. Now why could this be interesting? Right? Why would you care about this, or why would you ever want to do this? So sometimes when you do a VLOOKUP, for example, to do an example of a VLOOKUP. So if you don't know how VLOOKUP works, I have an entire video about VLOOKUP. You can go ahead and watch that. For now, let's say I'm going to do a pretty simple VLOOKUP. I'm going to say I'm going to be searching for this item, which is, so again, I'm putting in quotes because it's text. I'm looking for 6199-899-430. That's the item I'm going to be searching for, comma, and I'm going to be searching for in this range. Right? And again, with VLOOKUP, you have to make sure that whatever you're searching for needs to be located in the first column of the range. They're highlighting. Now for good practice, I'm going to just lock this with app4. It doesn't really matter here, but anyhow, so I'm going to go do comma. And if I do, let's say column index 3 and do an exact match or false option, which is 0 or false, that's going to get us the third column. Because I'm saying, let's get the third column match. So if I enter, see, I'm getting 6890, which is basically what looked for this. We found it and it was 6890. That was the coast for that. So again, if you don't know what I just did with VLOOKUP, go and watch VLOOKUP video. There is a lot to cover about VLOOKUP and I'm not going to cover VLOOKUPs here. But why do I want to mention this, right? So with VLOOKUPs, one thing that you're going to notice that you only can pull information from the right of your column where you're searching, right? So we're searching in stock numbers because we're looking for a stock number. Now I can only get the price or the cost, but I could not get this because this is located to the left. So to be able to do that, I can create this array type of range. So I can say, you know what? I want this to be my first column, which is my stock numbers, comma, and I want this product to be my second column, right here. So now this is my first column and this is my second column, right? And if I wanted to do a VLOOKUP, I would say, well, let's search for this item and now we're going to look for it, not here. We're going to look for it in here. So again, for good practice, lock that, right? And now because it's a different range, we have only 2 columns. I'm going to say I want to retrieve the information from column 2. So if I enter, I'm going to get whatever that product that I was searching for is. So for 3, 0 is this item, which is what we get. Now obviously we don't want to do this range on the side. We want to somehow incorporate that in our formula so we don't have this site stuff sitting here. So to do that, I simply go back and copy this array that gives me this result. And I can think about it as a result range. I can hit escape, go back here, and instead of providing this range for our lookup, which is this one over here, I'm safely going to paste that range here. And if I enter, that's going to work just fine. Now I don't need this anymore here. So I basically put that right in my formula and it works. Now again, for good practice, I'm going to lock this, And there we are. We have our end result. So that's something you can accomplish by rearranging columns. Now if VLOOKUP works, to look inside of this column and retrieve data from that column. So what else can we do with arrays? So again, the thing with arrays is that there are really unlimited things you can do. And once you really understand the core or how things work, then you're going to figure when you could potentially use something like arrays. But for right now, I'm going to use another function. It's called ARRAYFORMULA. And in this case, you can use ARRAYFORMULA if you want to get a formula that's also on arrays. So in the other case, when I was using the simple curly brackets, there was no formula. I was just selecting the data I needed. And I was saying, let's reposition it this way or reposition it that way, right? That was kind of the idea. Now what I'm going to do now is try to create a formula. And first of all, I guess, let me explain what a formula is going to do. So what I'm going to try to do is simply just get a sum of, or not the sum, but the average net profit from an item sale. So what do I mean by that? So what I want to do basically, let's take the price of each item minus the cost for each item, which is going to give us the difference, right? I want to copy this down, which gives me all of these values. And I want to see what's the average, basically profit or net, not really profit, we get from an item. So that should be 43.92. Now, however, I don't want to do all of this extra columns and all the stuff. I just want to get it working in my single formula. So to get to the same results, I can use an array formula. And in this array formula, I'm going to say, well, I want all of this minus all of this. So I'm basically taking a range minus another range. I'm going to close that parentheses. And if I hit enter right now, you see that what I get is basically these values right here as a result of my calculation. So I said, let's get all of this minus all of these. And at this point, I want to do the average of all of those. So I can wrap that whole thing in a function, average, hit enter. And I'm getting exactly the same value. And now I don't need this extra column to get to my result. Hopefully that makes sense. So that gets us our average, which is then we take our array formula results and average it out. We get 43.92. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, other thing we could do, let's say we could get like, what's the average profit margin, right? What does that mean? So how do I get average profit margin, right? So I need to get something like profit margin here. And to get our profit margin. So if I take the cost of the product and divide it by the price of the product, it's going to tell me what percentage of this product is the cost. So 78% of the price is the cost of that product right now. So to get to the actual profit margin, that's basically the remaining 22%, which is the rest that remains. So to get to that 22, we have to take 1 minus this 0.78 to get that to that 22, 0.22. So I'll just go here and do 1 minus that. And that gets me to that 22%. And if we copy it down, that's our profit margins. Now obviously you could do this as a percentage sign to make them pretty and stuff, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. So if you're watching this, hopefully you already know all that. So I'm going to go ahead and do an average and use the average or all of those. And basically that's our average profit margin. So that's about like 33%. Now let's get to the same result using an array formula. So I'm going to start array formula. So what I did, if you remember, I said, well, we're going to take cost and we're going to divide it by the price, but that gave us like what percentage is the cost out of the price. Now what I want to do is do the opposite, which is 1 minus that, which is what I did in my other formula, and then just close this parents right there and hit enter. And that should give me again, exactly the same thing. So basically I did the same type of formulas I did before over here, which is 1 minus this divided by this. Basically I did it with the entire range of items I have, and I have my array formula around it to treat it as an array. So now to get to my average again, I simply have to just take this thing and put it inside of my average function. Again, the lowercase, uppercase average doesn't matter here, but there it is. I get to the same number. That's our average profit margin. So again, I don't need any of this again. That's going to get me my average profit margin. Another thing you may want to get, I guess, is for example, get your bottom or top 5 highest margin products. So let's say we wanted to get the top 5 products with a higher margin, which what that means is probably shouldn't delete that. In this particular case, if we have this profit margins to get the top 5, see this is the 1, 2, this is the second highest profit margin. So then we have, what do we have? I guess this is very 30, 038, and then 036 or no, we have this as 0 for anyways, we just want to get the top 5. So first of all, how do we get the highest profit margin item? So to do that, again, a lot of this is going to be the same to get the highest profit margin item. So this gets us the average, what I did. If I simply just did max, instead of the average, that should give me the highest profit margin that I have out of my different items. Now we want to, let's say, get top 5. So how can we get something like that? So the way we can get something like that, we can basically sort all of this prices. And then once we sort, and we get the highest 5 on top, then we can just get to top 5, and that will get us those products. So how can we do this? So again, if I have, let me just take off this max, and this was our array formula that was giving us the set of values, see, with their margins. Now what I can do, I can use a function called sort. And see the sort, the first thing is the range, which is going to be provided by this array formula. And then what I want to do, I want to say comma, which column I want to sort by, I want to sort by that same column. So that's the first column in here, right? So that's the first column and comma. And finally, do I want to sort this ascending or descending? So as ascending is the true option. I don't want to have it as ascending. So I can either do false or I can do 0. So I'm going to do false here, close my parentheses, hit enter. So now you can see we got all of the results sorted, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and etc. So we wanted to get the top 5. So how can we do that? For that, we can use another function around this. So I'm just going to cut this so I can paste it. So it's not confusing. And the function is called ARRAYCONSTRAIN. And what this does, it's basically going to only allow us to get set of results instead of getting all of the results. So what does that mean? So the first thing is the range. So the range is going to come from that formula we had. And then I'm going to do comma. And then it says, how many rows do you want to get out of that? So what I want to do, I want to get 5 rows, comma, because we want top 5. And how many columns we want? Well, we have a single column of values. So I'm going to do 1, close my parentheses, hit enter, and there it is. We have our top 5 highest margin product as a result of this. Now you could say, I want to do the average of my top 5. You could just wrap this whole thing in an average function. Now what if we simply wanted to return the whole data set? We wanted to just find out those top 5 items. So we want like this, we want like this, we want like this. And we want like this, we want to return all of those. Instead of just getting the numbers, we want the entire row. Okay, so let's try to do something like that. I'm going to clean that up. I'm going to remove this too. And maybe delete this as well. Now what I want to do first is I want to create a new range of items. So what do I mean by this? So first of all, let's just start with that array formula. And my array formula, remember what I did? I said, let's take 1 minus our cost divided by our price. And if I close this, I hit enter, I'm getting this new column profit margin that we need. We're assuming that we don't have this extra column, right? And that's going to be this extra column. I'm actually going to cut this and move this over here. So I probably should have moved it a little down here. Okay, that's fine. Anyhow, so that's the same thing that I get here. Now what I want to get as a result is not just that. I want also all of these columns that are located on the left of this, right? So what I need to do, I need to make my array. So I'm going to cut that. I'm going to start with that curly bracket, right? So as a first result, I'm going to say I want all of this. And then new column is a comma, right? And I'm going to paste that array formula that's giving me that extra column. And I'm going to do a semi, not semicolon, but the curly bracket closing, whatever we're calling this, I'm going to hit enter. And what are you going to see is basically I have those results, which is all of my table on the left. And in addition to that, I also have that extra column that I was looking for. And this is obviously not connected to this at all. So if I delete this, still going to be the same, right? I'm still going to keep it so we can kind of reference it with our eyes, but just keep in mind that this is not connected to this column at all. And that's the whole point of doing this, right? You don't want that extra column. You just want your results. Okay. So now out of this result, what I want to do, I want to now sort these by this column over here. And that column is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 number 5 column. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to grab this whole thing, cut it because I'm going to need to use it. And I'm going to use my sort function. And the first thing is the range, which is that whole thing that I had. I'm going to paste it comma and then the sort column. So if you remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I want to sort by the 5th column. And is this ascending? No. So false or 0. Close that, hit enter. And now I'm going to get that same result only now sorted and we have the highest value on top. And now at this point, what I want to do, first of all, I want to basically just constrain my result. So I want to just get top 5. So I'm going to go back here, grab this whole thing and we're going to use our array constraint. Formula, I'm going to paste my range, comma. Now I wanted how many rows, the number of rows needs to be 5. That's how many results I want, comma. Now another interesting thing is that how many columns do I want to return? Because I don't really want to see this profit margin. I just want to see these columns. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to do 4 and I'm not going to do 5. So I could do 5 also to include that, profit margin column, but I don't want it. So I'm going to do 4 close parents hit enter and there we have it. Now we basically are able to dynamically extract top 5 margin products from our results. And again, keep in mind, this is not top 5 highest price or the lowest price. This is top 5 with the highest margin. What that means is that the first one should be this one, which is Nike Train Speed 4, right? This is 0.49. The second highest margin is 0.47, which is this Nike Train Ultra Fast. Whatever that is. And so on. Hopefully that makes some sense. And that's the result of a right constraint sort and array formula. All of those functions combined right here. Okay, I think that's enough for this video for introductory level. I'll do another video, which is probably going to get a little more advanced. But for this, I think this is it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and I'll see you next time.